Let's talk a little bit about why some people fear change and why some people deal poorly with change. In that, we'll get some hints on how to help them with that and, of course, how to help you overcome some of those fears as well. Now, first, let's talk about a kind of a common misunderstanding. I've heard this a lot over the years. People will say everyone fears or resists change. And you know what? Plain and simply, that's not true. There are those folks out there that absolutely enjoy a rapidly changing and ever-changing kind of environment, and there are those folks that absolutely would be unhappy if they had to work in an environment where it was very, very status quo dominated. They want change, they want regular change, and that's the kind of thing that interests them. But there is a population of folks that, I'm not going to say they resist change, but when the right ingredients aren't present, they will find ways to push back on that or resist it a little bit. And it's not about them digging in their heels and never wanting to change. It's just that they won't be as change adaptive or appear to be as change adaptive as other folks will. First, I want you to think about change as kind of a constantly looping secular event. Starting with the change event itself, and after that change event comes a stressing or mourning period. Now, a lot of folks kind of bristle when I use that mourning word. They think, you know, that's a little bit on the hyperbole side, and it's a little bit kind of melodramatic. But there are those folks that when there is a change event, they are so deeply ingrained into the way that they're doing something that they literally do mourn giving that up and moving into a new way of doing something. So after the stressing and mourning part of that cycle, next comes a coping cycle. And what that is, and when you hit that coping cycle, there's kind of an interesting line between that stressing part and that coping part, and that's almost a surrender that the change event is not going to go away. So I'm upset about the change, but gosh, look, it's not going anywhere, so I'm going to begin the process of coping with it. After the coping cycle, which is where new skills are developed and new methods of dealing with the new process or new team or whatever it is come into play, after that coping piece, then you get back into a performance mode again, where you're really kind of performing and hitting on all cylinders, almost as if you were before the change event, and in some cases better than the change event. Now, for some folks, the bad news is at the end of that piece, usually rests another change event. So again, think about change as that looping cycle where there is a change event, moves into stressing or mourning, behind that becomes coping, and then after that becomes performing, and many, many times after that becomes a new change event, which then perpetuates that cycle. So let's talk a little bit about why some folks push back from change. A lot of it is wrapped around, and I'm only going to cover 3 of the many, many reasons that people kind of resist change. But let's talk about the one that is wrapped around fear of the unknown. When somebody doesn't really understand or doesn't see the value in the change, they really can have a fear of what's it going to be like tomorrow. How am I going to be functional? How am I going to be valuable? How am I going to, I mean, even at its lowest level, how am I going to get my work done? Kind of fear of the unknown. The other one is a really, really easy one to cure. A lot of people push back on change simply because they had no voice in the change event. We didn't do a good job of asking them what they thought. We didn't seek their input into what would be a preferred solution. So because of that, they feel kind of alienated, and they're going to push back on whatever the solution or the new change or new innovation is. Third and final reason that I want to share with you that's pretty common in why people resist change, and that is a really, and out of all of them, it's the hardest one to manage. It's a very, very ego-driven piece that when a change event occurs, many times people lose their expertise. And you see this quite often, and I'll use the analogy of a computer system. And it doesn't matter what kind of operating environment you're in, we all have computer systems. Now, if you are that individual that is the resident expert, the resident go-to person related to that computer system, when you get a new computer system, you're no longer the resident expert. You're not the one with the highest degree of operating knowledge. You're not the one that has the longest tenure of working in it. You're not the person that people now go and seek for how do we do things in that computer system. And I got to tell you, that is a really, really tough, egocentric pill for a lot of folks to swallow, where they were the expert in doing it a certain way, and now they're no longer the expert. That one requires a lot more work to get through, and again, we'll talk about how to move people through that change piece in one of the upcoming episodes.